Hello gardener, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to guide you through everything that you need to know about growing zucchini from seed all the way to harvest. Zucchini is one of my absolute favorite warm season vegetables to grow because it's incredibly productive and there is a wide variety of unique cultivars that you would never get to eat if you didn't grow it yourself. However, the squash category of crops are a magnet for pests and diseases, and if you're not prepared on how to manage them, they will destroy your zucchini plants before you even begin to harvest. But no worries, I have expert tips and knowledge to share with you guys, some you may have never heard of, so you are successful growing zucchini every single time. If you're new here, my name is Jara. I've been gardening all of my life and I'm a professional seed and plant nursery. I love to share my knowledge and teach others how to garden and grow food, so you've come to the right place if you want to improve your gardening skills. Zucchini is a type of summer squash in the cucurbit family, which includes other crops like cucumbers and melons. Specifically, zucchini is in the pepo group. It grows on bushy plants. It is not a vining crop, so no vertical trellis is required to grow it, but it has a sprawling type of habit. Most varieties grow one long, thick stem that kind of looks like a green spinal cord, in my opinion. This spinal cord thing just grows the entire season, getting longer and longer. The flowers, and therefore fruit, which is the zucchini, will form along the newest growth of this long spinal cord. So it is super important that this spinal cord is protected and stays healthy. Don't cut or prune it. You can prune away leaves, especially any heavily diseased leaves, which I will discuss further in this video, but don't cut the hardwood-like stem. The stem can be trained to grow vertically. You would have to tie it upwards as it grows, but most people let it sprawl and grow across the ground like what you see here. When shopping for zucchini seeds, you will be bombarded by a plethora of varieties. For the most part, they all taste the same. There are differences in shape, color, maturity, or how long it takes to get to the harvest point after sowing the seeds, among other things. If you're looking for a standard dark green zucchini, I recommend an old, reliable heirloom variety called Black Beauty. Another heirloom that I love is a variety called Cocoselle. It is an old Italian heirloom that is striped and slightly ribbed with excellent flavor. If you're looking for an early maturing heirloom variety, try gray zucchini, small round zucchini, or any type of patty pan squash. These varieties are always the first to start producing in my garden. If you're most concerned about the pests and diseases, then there are some really great options. If you only want to use heirloom seeds, then I recommend Tromboncino rapicante. It grows these really big baseball bat sized squash that when harvested in its young green stage can be used as an equal substitute for zucchini. I love it so much, I have a whole YouTube video dedicated on how to grow it, which I will link below in the description. Tromboncino rapicante is in the Cucurbita moscata family, not Cucurbita pepo like regular zucchini. This is important to note because the C. moscata group of squash are very disease and pest resistant. They have tough woody stems that make it harder for the pests to destroy them. Lastly, I recommend zucchini hybrids that were bred to have very high disease and pest resistance. One of my favorites is a variety called White Lebanese. It was bred in Israel to not only produce early, but also have a high heat tolerance. Besides that, some other notable disease and pest resistant hybrids include Desert and Dunja. If you need zucchini seeds, I have many available on my website, which I will link below in the description. Zucchini is a warm season crop that thrives in temperatures between 65 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. It does not do well in extreme heat, like days and days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit or above. This causes the plants to get stunted, meaning they stop growing, flowering, and producing. Zucchini also does not grow well in cold temperatures. Growth declines once temperatures start dropping below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, with significant cold damage starting when it drops around below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Therefore, zucchini and other types of summer squash are best grown in the spring and fall seasons. As far as soil requirements, if you want to grow lots of perfect zucchini, it has to grow in soil rich in organic matter. Zucchini is a heavy feeder, so amend the soil with compost, manure, or a balanced organic fertilizer before planting. Zucchini is a full sun crop, meaning it produces best when growing in 8 hours of full direct sun per day. More sun generally means more abundant fruit production. It is important to provide consistent soil moisture. Zucchini is not the most drought tolerant crop, and if constantly water stressed or wilted, its immune system will be lowered, which attracts pests and diseases. You don't want the soil to be waterlogged either. That causes root rot. Let the soil dry out just a little bit in between watering. Okay, let's talk about when and how to sow zucchini seeds. General guidelines say to direct sow zucchini seeds after your last spring frost day or when you start planting your fall garden. Zucchini is so easy to just direct sow the seeds, and it will grow faster when compared to seedlings started in containers indoors at the same time. So direct sowing is my preferred method. These general guidelines work for the majority of the United States, but not for those of you who are gardening in a tropical or subtropical climate. This is pretty much any areas that don't get snow. For my hot climate gardener friends, it is best to direct sow squash seeds 2 weeks before before your last spring frost date. The goal is to harvest everything out before the pests and diseases wake up from their winter dormancy in late spring. Your area might still get another 1 or 2 cold fronts with potential frost. Just protect the seedlings and you will get a huge head start. I cover my seedlings with cardboard boxes or flip some plastic milk jugs over them with the bottom cut out. It's just for a few nights. When I do this, I'm done harvesting all of my zucchini and patty pan squash before summer arrives. I don't grow zucchini during the summer because it is so difficult. You have to really stay on top of pest and disease treatments, and even if you manage to keep the plants alive, they won't produce because the temperatures are way too high, above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, this is for my hot climate gardener friends because for us it's really hard growing zucchini during the summer. But if you're in a state up north where you have more temperate weather and less disease and pest pressure, zucchini or other types of summer squash are a really great summer crop for you. If you're gardening in an area that does not even get frost, like my South Florida gardeners, direct sow seeds for squash in late fall, like November and December, to grow it straight through the winter. To direct sow zucchini seeds, create a small mound of soil about 2 feet apart or in rows with plant space 2 to 3 feet apart. Push 2 to 3 seeds about 1 inch deep into the soil into each hill. Cover lightly and water gently. Keep the soil evenly moist until germination, which usually takes 7 to 10 days. If all the seeds germinate, I leave them. I don't thin them out. One of my favorite ways to grow zucchini is to direct sow seeds on the very edge of my raised garden beds or in grow bags. As the plants grow longer, I just push the vines and leaves out of the sides of the raised bed or grow bag so they sprawl out in the surrounding area. That gives me much more space to grow other things in the same raised bed or container. If you prefer to grow your own transplants, I highly suggest you do so indoors only. Pests and diseases will find the seedlings, so growing them indoors will protect them. Sow the seeds in a larger size container because they grow rapidly and will very soon become root bound if grown in a container that is too small. I like to sow 2 seeds in a solo cup with drainage holes cut out of the bottom. A solo cup is big enough to house the seedlings during its entire growing period, so you don't have to waste time potting up. In 4 to 6 weeks, your squash seedlings should look like this. Transplant it outdoors once you're past your last spring frost date. Like I mentioned before, zucchini is a heavy feeder. A consistent fertilizer schedule is key if you want to pull the most production out of your plants and constantly encourage new leafy growth to outpace all the leaves that are catching diseases and pests. I like to fertilize my zucchini plants with small doses of an organic fertilizer every week. It has to be organic because you risk burning your plants if you fertilize this often with synthetic fertilizers. My favorite fertilizer for this is an organic granular fertilizer like Job's or Espoma brand. I add 1/8 of a cup every week at the base of the plants and water it in. If you prefer something liquid, I like AgroThrive brand of organic liquid fertilizers. I can't stress how important it is to fertilize. Zucchini and all summer squash get tons of diseases and pests, which means I prune out a lot of the infected leaves. It is very normal for them to get diseases and pests. I expect it every time I grow them, so don't freak out. Just be prepared and fertilize frequently to stimulate lots of plant growth and vigor. Next, let's talk about the most common pests and diseases you will encounter when growing zucchini so you're prepared and know what to do. Pickle worms, also called cabbage worms, are actually not worms. They're the caterpillar stage of various moths and butterflies, but they like to chew the leaves of basically everything in the cucurbit family. A lot of these worms are nocturnal, so you won't see them. But if you noticed chewed up leaves and small orange, green, or black balls on the leaves, that's actually the frass from the worms. Then you know you definitely have a worm problem. To treat, spray with spinosad, which is considered an organic treatment. Please only spray spinosad in the evening when all the pollinators have gone for the day, and use a sprayer like this pressurized hand pump sprayer to carefully apply a fine mist of spinosad to the leaves. Don't spray your entire garden and don't spray flowers. Only spray the affected plants to minimize injury to beneficial insects. Other than that, spinosad is very safe to use and very effective at killing chewing or soft-bodied insects like worms. And I'll put links in the description to spinosad and any other supplies that I mentioned in this video, like the fertilizers in the description. Next, we have squash bugs, which are the most common pests that I get on all of the cucurbits in my garden. It's also one of the more difficult ones to treat for. Squash bugs suck the sap from your plants and in large numbers cause serious wilting, plant stress, and transfer of plant diseases. The adult squash bug has a hard shell that protects them from the majority of spray treatments. It is best to go after their baby nymphs, which are red and black or gray in color. Spray the nymphs with an organic pesticide that contains pyrethrin. Capture the adults by hand or with a small hand vacuum and drop them in a bucket of soapy water. Also use duct tape to remove their egg clusters off your plants. I have a whole YouTube video guide that lists 12 different ways to get rid of squash bugs, which I will link below in the description. I want to stress how important it is to grow squash during the early spring and fall or if you're a hot climate gardener, during the fall, winter, and some of early spring, so that you harvest everything out before any of these pests start to infiltrate your garden. For example, I notate the date when I start noticing squash bugs appearing in my garden. It usually is always sometime in June. So I know if I'm not done harvesting out all of my cucurbit crops by June, they will attract a ton of squash bugs. My last spring frost date is around February 8th, so I direct sow seeds at the end of January. By March, I started harvesting. By June, I'm done harvesting. The plants are old and at the end of their life cycle anyways. I start cleaning up the garden and removing all the squash plants. If there is no squash plants for the squash bugs to feast upon, it's their favorite food, they won't come into my garden as badly. It is a natural way to prevent pests. Planting the right crop at the right time of year will save you from so many issues, all while ensuring you get to the harvest point. Just like the squash bug example, the dreaded squash vine borer is known to be most active during the months of June and July. So again, time your planting of zucchini so you're done harvesting by this point. Squash vine borer is the larval stage of a moth. The moth lays its eggs on the leaves or stem. They hatch into a larva or caterpillar and bore their way into the stems of your squash plants. If they bore deep enough into the main stem, remember I call it the spinal cord, it cuts the whole plant off from its root system and it dies. It is a very difficult pest to detect, and once it bores inside the stem, it's protected from sprays. You can cover your cucurbits with row covers to stop the moth from laying eggs on them, but you have to be very good at sealing and closing the edges of the row covers so the moth doesn't slip in. I know I'm not good at keeping up with putting row covers over my crops, so I just stick with planting zucchini early, harvesting it out before June, and then pulling the plants out. And voila, I don't have to deal with the dreaded squash vine borer. Lastly, I just want to mention that if you struggle with nematodes, squash is a magnet for them. I don't have too bad of a nematode problem in my garden, but the few instances that I find it, they're always on some sort of cucurbit crop or my tomatoes. Nematodes are a very hard pest to deal with. They are most active in the summer. So again, I don't like to grow zucchini during the summer because it will attract nematodes. All of the pests I mentioned are the worst, really the hardest things to prevent and treat for. I don't want to discourage you from growing squash. I still grow it every year because it's delicious, abundant, and there are so many recipes and uses for it. You can do it, just be prepared and smart about when you grow it. Now let's talk about the most common diseases you will get when growing zucchini and other types of squash. By far, the most common thing you're going to get is powdery mildew. Everyone who grows squash gets it. Powdery mildew is a fungus that spreads in warm and humid conditions. It looks like a fine white powder, which is actually the spores across the leaves. A lot of varieties of squash have a natural silver variegation to the leaves, so don't confuse that with powdery mildew. This is the same squash plant, and you can clearly see this is natural silvery variegation on the leaves. A lot of different squash cultivars have some sort of silver variegation like this, and this right here is powdery mildew. You can see it looks like a very fine powder just covering the entire leaf. This one has powdery mildew pretty badly. If the wind shakes the leaves or I shake it myself, you might notice some powder kind of floating around in the air. That's the spores from the powdery mildew, and that's how they end up spreading to other plants. Prune out the badly infected leaves and spray with a treatment. There are lots of treatments for powdery mildew: milk sprays, neem oil, and baking soda sprays, but by far my favorite treatment is spraying with 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon of water. It is very safe to use, so I douse my plants with this stuff. It will clean and disinfect the leaves. Then fertilize well to encourage new healthy growth. In cool, wet conditions, you will get downy mildew, which is another fungus. It looks like yellow necrotic patches on the leaves that dry out and turn brown. Again, prune out infected leaves and spray with your preferred fungus treatment. Overall, keep the leaves as dry as possible to reduce spread of diseases. Do not wet the leaves. Instead, water at the base of the plants. And prune well for better air circulation that will help the leaves dry faster. Lastly, if your plants looked great one day and then all of a sudden the next day they are wilted, they might have bacterial wilt, which is not curable. It is a bacterial infection inside of the plant that spreads by various pests. If this happens, your best course is to just yank the whole plant out and throw it away in the trash. There is no cure. It will not heal and bounce back. Remove the plant because it is now a host for the bacteria and will cause it to spread further in your garden. Do not compost with infected plant matter either. Rotate crops each year to reduce the buildup of pathogens that cause disease and maintain healthier plants. As the season progresses, your zucchini plants will start producing flowers. Then you know harvest is right around the corner. The plants will bloom a bunch of male flowers first. This is a male flower with the pollen in the center. Then when the plant is ready, it will start producing female flowers, which are easily identified because they have a tiny baby squash at the base of the flower. By the way, there is nothing you can do to speed up the presence of female blooms. You just have to wait. It is said the male flowers appear first to attract pollinators into the area, and then the female blooms show up. In order for a fruit to form, pollen on the stamen from a male flower has to be deposited into the pistil of the female flower. Bees will help pollinate, but many times they don't do a good enough job. They don't deposit enough pollen, so the little baby fruit shrivels up and dies. If you want to ensure that every female flower gets pollinated, you should hand pollinate them yourself. It is very easy. Flowers usually bloom for just one day, so I like to check my squash plants every day early in the morning after the dew has dried. The pollen should be nice, dry, and fluffy. I take a male flower and pull off the petals so I just have the stamen with pollen left on it. I then rub the pollen in the center of the female flower, making sure I cover all of the pistil sections. If it was properly pollinated, you should notice the baby fruit starts to grow bigger in size instead of shriveling away. In just a few days, it will be ready for harvest. Most standard zucchini varieties are best harvested before they get over 6 to 8 inches long, or about the length of your hand. This is for the best flavor and texture. Zucchini grows quickly, so check your plants and harvest if needed every day. Frequent harvesting also promotes more production. If you leave large, mature zucchini on the plant, it signals the plant to slow down or stop producing. I like to cut the squash off the plant with some kitchen scissors, leaving about 1 inch of the stem piece. It will help the zucchini store for a longer time. This variety is called gray zucchini. It has a beautiful pattern and is early producing. This is a patty pan type of squash. It is used exactly like you would zucchini or other summer squash. And this one is one of my favorite varieties for disease and pest resistance. It is called white Lebanese. Zucchini will keep for a few days on your kitchen counter or store in the crisper drawer of your fridge so they last a couple of weeks. Zucchini produces a lot, so there is plenty to share with family and friends. It is so productive that I like to dehydrate so I can store it long term. Dried zucchini makes a great addition to my winter soups or slow cooker meals. I will post any recipes that I have over on my second YouTube channel called Jera's Fresh Kitchen. I'll link them below in the description as well. If you have any unique and delicious ways to preserve zucchini or other summer squash long term, please let me know in the comments. I would love to try it. I hope this video has given you the confidence to grow zucchini and other types of summer squash from seed all the way to harvest. It's one of the most rewarding and productive crops for any home gardener. If you found this detailed guide helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with your gardening friends. Feel free to comment below with your own zucchini growing tips or questions. Thank you for watching and happy gardening.